Never open a book with the weather. Who was it who said that? I can't remember. Some famous writer, I expect. Whoever it was, they were right. Weather is boring. Nobody wants to read about weather, particularly in England, where we have so much of it. People want to read about people, and they generally skip descriptive paragraphs in my experience. Avoiding the weather is good advice, which I now disregard at my peril. An exception to prove the rule, I hope. Don't worry. My story isn't set in England, so I'm not talking about rain here. I draw the line at rain. No book should start with rain ever. No exceptions. I'm talking about wind. The wind that whirls around the Greek islands. Wild, unpredictable Greek wind. Wind that drives you mad. The wind was fierce that night, the night of the murder. It was ferocious, furious, crashing through the trees, tearing along pathways, whistling, wailing, snatching all other sound arising with it. Leo was outside when we heard the gunshots. He was on his hands and knees, at the back of the house, being sick in the vegetable garden. He wasn't drunk, just stoned. Mea culpa, I'm afraid. He'd never smoked weed before. I probably shouldn't have gave him any. After an initial semi-static experience, apparently involving a supernatural vision, he felt nauseous and started throwing up. Just then the wind sped towards him, hurling the sound straight at him. Bang, bang, bang. 3 gunshots in quick succession. Leo pulled himself up. As steadily as he could, he paddled his way against the gale in that direction of the gunfire, away from the house, along the path, through the olive grove, toward the ruin. And there, in the clearing sprawl of the ground, was a body. The body lay in a withering pool of blood, surrounded by the semicircle of ruined marble columns, casting impartially in shadow. Leo cautiously approached it, peering at the face. Then he stared backward, his expression contorted in horror, opening his mouth to scream. I arrived at the moment, along with the others, in time to hear the beginning of Leo's howl, before the wind grabbed the sound from his lips and ran off with it, disappearing into the dark. We all stood still for a second, silent. It was a horrifying moment, terrifying, like the climactic scene in Greek tragedy. But the tragedy didn't end there. It was just the beginning. This is a tale of murder, or maybe that's not quite true. At its heart, it's a love story, isn't it? The saddest kind of love story, about the end of love, the death of love. So I guess I was right the first time. You may think you know this story. You probably read about it at the time. The tabloids loved it. If you recall, Murder Island was a popular headline. Unsurprising, really, as it had all the perfect ingredients for a press sensation. A reclusive ex-movie star, a private Greek island caught on the wind, and of course a murder. A lot of rubbish was written about that night. All kinds of wild, inaccurate theories about what may or may have not have taken place. I avoided all of it. I had no interest in reading misinformed speculation about what might have happened on the island. I knew what happened. I was there. Who am I? Well, I am the narrator of this tale, and also a character in it. There were 7 of us all trapped in the island. One of us was murdered. But before you start bets on which of us did it, I feel duty bound to inform that it's not a whodunit. Thanks to Agatha Christie, we all know how this kind of story is meant to play out. A baffling crime, followed by a dodgy investigation and ingenious solution. Then, if you're lucky, a twist in the tale. But this is a true story, and not a work of fiction. It's about real people in a real place. If anything, it's a why done it, a character study, an examination of who we are and why we do the things we do. What follows in my sincere and heartfelt attempt to reconstruct the events of that terrible night, the murder itself, and everything that led up to it, I pledge to present you with a plain, unvarnished truth, or as near to it as I can get. Everything with it is said and thought. But how? I hear you ask. How is it possible? How can I possibly know it all? Not just every action taken, everything said and done, but everything undone, unsaid, all the private thoughts in one other's minds. For the most part, I am relying on the conversation we have before the murder and afterward. Those of us who survive, that is. As for the dead, I trust you'll grant me artistic license regarding their interior life. Given I am playwright by trade, I am perhaps better qualified than most of this particular task. My account is also based on my notes, taken both before and after the murder. A word of explanation regarding this. I have been in the habit of keeping notebooks for some years now. I wouldn't call them diaries. They're not as structured as that. Just a record of my thoughts, ideas, dreams, snatches of conversations I overhear, my observations of the world. The notebooks themselves are nothing fancy, just plain black moleskiness. I have the relevant notebook from the year up and now by my side, and will no doubt consult it as we proceed. I stress all this so if at any point during the narrative I mislead you, you will understand that it is by accident, not design, because I'm actually skewing the events too much from my own point of view. An occupational hazard, perhaps, when it narrates a story in which one happens to play a minor role. Nonetheless, I'll do my best not to hijack the narrative too often. Even so, I'll hope you indulge me to the odd digestion here and there. And before you accuse me of telling my story in a labyrinth manner, let me remind you that this is a true story, and in real life, that's how we communicate, isn't it? We're all over the place. We jump back and forth in time, slow down and expand on some moments, fast forward thoughts to others, editing as we go, minimizing flaws and maximizing assets. We are all the unreliable narrators of our own lives. It's funny. I feel that you and I should be sitting together on a couple of bar stools right now as I tell you this tale, like two old friends drinking at a bar. This is a story for anyone who has ever loved, I say, sliding a drink in your direction, a large one. You'll need it as you settle down and I begin. I ask you not to interrupt too much, at least not for first. There will be plenty of opportunity for debate afterwards. For now, I request you politely hear me out, as you might indulge a friend's rather lengthy anecdote. It's time to meet our cast of suspects, in order of importance. And therefore, for the moment, I must reluctantly remain off stage. I'll, however, in the wings, waiting for my cue. Let us begin as we should, with the star. Let's begin with Lana. Lana Farrar was a movie star. Lana was a big star. She became a star when she was very young. Back in the days, still meant something. Before anyone with an internet connection could become celebrity. No doubt many of you will know her name or have seen her in movies. She made too many to mention. If you're anything like me, one or two of them are very dear to your heart. Despite retiring a decade before our story begins, Lana's fame endured, and no doubt long after I am dead and forgotten, as thought as I never existed, Lana Farrar will be remembered, and rightly so. As Shakespeare wrote about Cleopatra, she has earned her place in the story. Lana was discovered at the age of 19 by the fabled Oscar-winning Hollywood producer Otto Krantz, whom she later married. Until his ultimate death, Otto dedicated his considerable energy and clout to furthering Lana's career, designing entire movies as showcase for her talents. But Lana was destined to be a star with or without Otto. It wasn't just her flawless face, the sheer luminous beauty of her Botticelli angel, those eyes of endless blue, or the way she held herself, or spoke, or her famous smile. No, there was some other quality about Lana, something intangible, the trace of her demigoddess, something mythical, magical. It made her endlessly, compulsively watchable. In the presence of such beauty, all you wanted to do was gaze. Lana made a lot of movies when she was young, and there was, to be honest, a slight sense of mud being slung at a wall to see what she could stick. And while her romantic comedies were a hit or miss, in my opinion, and her thrillers came and went, gold was finally struck when Lana played her first tragedy. She was Ophelia in a modern-day adaptation of Hamlet and received her first Oscar nomination. From then on, suffering nobly became Lana's specialty. Call them tearjerkers or whippies, Lana excelled as every doomed romantic heroine from Anna Karenina to Joan of Arc. She never got the guy. She really made it out alive, and we loved for it. As you can imagine, Lana made an enormous amount of money for a lot of people. When she was 35, during an otherwise financially catastrophic couple of years for Paramount, the profits from one of her biggest successes kept the studio afloat, which is why there was a sizable ripple of shock within the industry when Lana suddenly announced her retirement. At the height of the fame and beauty and the tender age of 40, it was a mystery why she had decided to quit, and was destined to remain one, for Lana offered no explanation, not then, nor in the years to come. She never spoke about it publicly. She told me, though, one wintry night in London, as we drank whiskey by the fire, watching snowflakes drift past the window, she told me the whole story, and I told her about that. Damn, there I go again, already worming my way back into the narrative. It seems that despite my best intentions, I keep failing to keep myself out of Lana's story. Perhaps I should admit defeat, except we were inseparably intertwined, she and I, knotted up like a ball of matted string, impossible to tell apart of the tangle. Even if that's true, however, our friendship came later. At this point in the story, we hadn't met. In those days, I was living with Barbara West in London, and Lana, of course, was in Los Angeles. Lana was a Californian, born and bred. She lived there, worked there, made the majority of her movies there. However, once Otto died, and she had retired, Lana decided to leave Los Angeles for a fresh start. But where to go? Tennessee Williams famously said, "There is nowhere to go when you retire from movies, unless you go to the moon." But Lana didn't go to the moon. She went to England instead. She moved to London with her young son Leo. She bought them a massive house in Mayfair, 6 stories high. She didn't intend to stay for long, certainly not forever. It was a temporary experiment in a new style of living while Lana worked out what to do with the rest of her life. The problem was, without her all-consuming career to define her, Lana had the uncomfortable realization that she didn't know who she was, nor she wanted to do with herself. She felt lost, she told me. It's hard for those of us who remember Lana Farrar movies to picture her as being lost. On screen she suffered a great deal, but did so stoicism, inner fortitude, and tremendous guts. She would face her destiny without flinching and go down fighting. She was everything you want in a hero. In real life, Lana couldn't be more different from her screen persona. Yes, there was a superficial resemblance. She couldn't help looking like her, and she walked a career herself with the same. Once you got to know her immediately, you began to glimpse another person hidden behind the facade, a more fragile and complicated self, someone who was much less sure of herself. Most people never encounter this to other person, but as this story unfolds, we must keep a lookout for her, you and I, for she holds all its secrets. This discrepancy, for want of a better word, between Lana's public and private self was something I struggled with over the years. I know Lana struggled with it too, particularly when she first left Hollywood and moved to London. Thankfully, she didn't have to struggle too long before fate intervened and Lana fell in love with an Englishman, a slightly younger, handsome businessman named Jason Miller. Whether this falling in love was, in fact, fate, or just a convenient distraction, a way for Lana to postpone, perhaps indefinitely, all those tricky existential dilemmas about herself and her future, is open to question, in my mind at least. Anyway, Lana and Jason were married, and London became Lana's permanent home. Lana liked London. She liked it largely, I suspect, because of the English reserve. People there tended to leave her alone. It's not in the English national character to accost ex-movie stars on the street, demanding selfies and autographs, no matter how famous they might be. So for the most part, Lana could walk around the city undisturbed. She walked a lot. Lana enjoyed walking when the weather allowed it. Oh, the weather. Like anyone else who spends any length of time in Britain, Lana developed an unhealthy preoccupation with the climate. As the years passed, it became a constant source of frustration for her. She liked London, but after nearly 10 years of living there, the city and its weather had become synonymous in her. In her mind, they were inexplicable, linked. London equal wet, equal rain, equal grey. This year had been particularly gloomy. It was nearly Easter, and so far, not a hint of spring had materialized. Currently, it was threatening rain. Lana glanced up at the blackening skies, and she wandered through Soho. Sure enough, she then felt a spot of rain in her face, and another on her hand. Damned. She had better turn back now before it got worse. Lana started retracting her steps and her thoughts. She returned to the thorny problem she had been mulling over. Something was bothering her, but she didn't know what it was. She had been feeling anxious for several days. She felt restless, uneasy, as if pursued by something and trying to give it the slip, keeping her head down in the narrow streets, evading it was trailing her. But what was it? Think, she told herself, work it out. As she walked, Lana made an inventory of her life, searching for any glaring dissatisfaction or worries. Was it her marriage? Unlikely. Jason was stressed out about work, but that was nothing new. The relationship was in a good place at that moment. The problem wasn't there. Then where? Her son? Leo? Was it their conversation the other day? It was just an amicable chat about his future, wasn't it? Or was it far more complicated? Another spot of rain distracted her. Lana glared resentfully at the clouds. No wonder she could think straight. If only she could see the sky, see the sun. As she made her way home, her mind played on this idea of escaping the weather. Here at least, something could be done. How about the change of scene? It was Easter next weekend. What if they took the last-minute trip in search for sunshine? Why not to go to Greece for a few days? To the islands? Why not indeed? It would do them good, Jason, Leo, and Lana in particular. She could invite Kay and Elliot too. She thought, yes, that would be fun. Lana smiled. The promise of sunlight and blue skies instantly brightened her mood. She pulled her phone out of her pocket. She called Kate straight away. Kate was in the middle of rehearsal. She was due to open in just over a week at the Old Vic in a new highly anticipated production, Agamemnon, directed by Askews. Kate was playing Clytemnestra. This was the first run thought of the play in the actual theater, and it was not going well. Kate was still struggling with her performance, more specifically with her lines, which at this stage of the game was not a good sign. For Christ's sake, Kate, yelled the director Gordon from the stalls in the blooming glass-winged accent. We open in 10 days. Can you not, for the love of God, sit down with a fucking book and learn the lines? Kate was equally exasperated. I know the lines, Gordon. That's not the problem. And what is it? Pray enlighten me, love. But Gordon was being heavily sarcastic and not waiting for an answer. Keep going, he shouted. Between you and me, entre nous, as Barbara West used to say, I don't blame Gordon for losing his temper. You see, despite Kate's immense talent, and she was hugely talented, let's make no mistake about that, she was also chaotic, messy, temperamental, unusual tardy, often belligerent, not always sober, as well as, of course, brilliant, charismatic, funny, and possessing an unerring instinct for the truth, both on off stage. All of which combined meant, as poor Gordon has discovered, she was a bloody nightmare to work with. But that's not fair, is it? Slipping in my judgment of Kate like that, under the radar, so to speak, as if you wouldn't notice. I'm a sly one, aren't I? I've sworn to be objective in as much as it's possible and let you make up your own mind. So I must honor that vow. Henceforth, I will endeavor to keep my opinion to myself. I will stick to the facts. Kate Crosby was a British theatre actor. She grew up in London in a working-class family. South of the river, thought any trace of an accent had long since been obliterated by the years of drama school and voice training. Kate spoke what we used to be known as a BBC accent, rather refined and hard to place. But if it must be said, her vocabulary remained as earthy as ever. She was deliberately provocative with a touch of the end of the pear. As Farrar was put it, body is the word I use. There was a famous story about how Kate once met King Charles when he was still a Prince of Wales. At a charity luncheon he was hosting, Kate asked Charles how far away the toilets were, adding she was so desperate to, if she had to, she pissed the sink. Charles roared with laughter, apparently entirely charmed. Kate's eventual debut was no doubt secured, and then Kate was in her late 40s when our story begins, or possibly older. It's hard to know exactly. Like many actors, the precise date of her birth was mobile feast. She didn't look her age anyway. She was lovely to look at, as dark as Lana was fair. Dark eyes, dark hair. In her own way, Kate was every inch as attractive as her American friend. Unlike Lana, she used a great deal for makeup, heavy use of eyeliner, and several layers of thick black mascara, accentuating her big eyes. The mascara never came off, to my knowledge. I think she just added a layer or two daily. Kate's whole look was more actressy than Lana's. Lots of jewelry, chains, bracelets, scarves, boots, peacoats. It's as if she were doing everything she could to be noticed. Whereas Lana, who in many ways was truly extraordinary, always dressed in as simple manner as possible, as if drawing undue attention to herself would be in a bad taste somehow. Kate was a dramatic person, larger than life, with a restless energy. She drank and smoked constantly. In this and every other regard, I suppose, Lana and Kate must be regarded opposite. Their friendship was always a bit of mystery to me, I'll admit. They seemed to have so little in common, yet they were very best of friends, and had been for a long time. In fact, of all of the several intertwining love stories in this tale, Lana and Kate's relationship was the earliest, endured, and the longest, and was perhaps the saddest of all. How did two such different people ever become friends? I suspect you'd had a lot to do with it. The friends we make when we are younger are rarely the kind of people we seek out later in life. The length of time we have known them accords them in a kind of nostalgia in our eyes, if you will, an indulgence, a free pass in our lives. Kate and Lana met 30 years ago on a film set, an independent movie being shot in London, an adaptation of The Awkward Age by Henry James. Vanessa Redgrave was playing the lead Mrs. Brooke, and Lana was her daughter, the ingenuine Nanda Brokender. Kate had a comic supporting role of the Italian cousin, Agi. Kate made Lana laugh a lot off camera as well as on, and over the summer shot, the two young women became friends. Kate introduced Lana to the London nightlife, and they were soon out every night, having a raucous time, turning up on the set hungover sometimes, no doubt knowing Kate's still drunk. It's like falling in love, isn't it? When you make new friends, and Kate was Lana's first close female friend, her first ally in life. Where was I? Forgive me. It's proving rather to keep hold of us, a linear narrative. I must endeavor to master it, or we'll never make it to the island, let alone the murder. Kate's rehearsal, that's it.